Maybe I can. It's really useful wearing your sunglasses in this kind of environment. I do apologise. Sorry. Anyway, as you know, hopefully, I'm Sue Malden. Used to work at the BBC Archive, Focal International, and now volunteer with the British Entertainment History Project, which I was talking to someone earlier, I won't name names, who's working on something. And I said, oh, you know, we've got an interview with him, if that's useful. And I met Jo from the BFI over breakfast. And she said she listens to our interviews while she's cooking and things like that. So it's a wonderful collection of stuff. If you're in, I keep using the word stuff, sorry. If you're interested in film making and television and stuff, oh God, stuff again. I ought to go off for a lesson on, yeah. The interviews with some amazing people that many people have never even heard of and don't know what they've achieved. And then when you get into it and hear their interviews, it's wonderful what they've experienced and what they've done in terms of the film industry that people don't even know you ever needed to do that, if you know what I mean, with the digital stuff. It's stuff again. Anyway, enough of all that. So they're two very interesting guys who know a lot of stuff. Paul Vanezis, independent television producer. Is that
Hello
right?
there.
And
I'm a freelancer.
Well, okay, freelancer.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah. And Dick Fiddy from the BFI, most notable for Missing Believed Wiped.
Yeah, I'm the organizer of Missing Believed Wiped, but I'm officially the BFI's archive television programmer because we show old television just like we show old films at the BFI.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks. I was going to ask if you did anything else. No, it's just, sorry. There's some people in the audience who know Dick. So what we're going to talk about is why some television programs are missing. I was promoted in a way to be the first television archive selector at the BBC. I couldn't be called a television archivist because of grading issues, which I'm sure nobody in the BBC knows what on earth that means these days, but it was all like job evaluation. And I think I was suitable for that job because I was so shocked when I started working there as a librarian. I had always assumed, if I'd even thought about it, that television programs and like radio programs were broadcast and they were taken off the machine and they were put on a shelf and kept there forever. And I got the shock of my life to find out so much of it was missing. And when I became the TV selector, I needed to try and find out why. And in that context, I've come across people like Paul and Dick. And everybody knows why. It was things like the cost of videotape. You could reuse it. The rights hadn't been cleared for a lot of equity members, so you couldn't repeat it. All those sort of reasons, and also maybe a lot of other less justifiable reasons why stuff hadn't kept. So first of all, just to ask you two, what's your experience of what do you know about why television stuff didn't survive?
Well, initially, of course, television went out live and there was no way to record it, no way to do it. When they started experimenting with tele-recording in the 40s by locking a camera onto a monitor, changing the speed that the camera ran up so it didn't get the lines and the roll that you'd get, and finally came up with a device that wasn't perfect, but at least it did get you a record of what had gone out. And so tele-recordings became a way that they started to survive. Of course, everyone treated television, much like radio, as ephemeral. They didn't think that there was any need to keep it. Everyone working in television was just hell-bent on what to do next, not what they'd done before. So there was no impetus to keep programming. They had no foresight. They didn't know there was going to be nostalgia channels. They didn't know there was going to be a huge business in nostalgia and archive television.
And can I just interrupt? Another thing I realized when I started researching all this, that a lot of people in the early days of television came from the theatre and the music hall, and they would put on a performance. They would repeat it twice a day, if not 3 times a day. So any concept of recording it was alien to them. And also one of the issues was the repeats. The BBC were only allowed 2 repeats of a program, and then they had to renegotiate. So again, there was not much incentive then to keep it. But sorry, Dick, carry on.
No, you're right. Repeats in the 40s and 50s meant the cast got back together and did it again. And that was the way it went on. And also the
1984 was a classic of that, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And it's the second performance that he's kept.
Yeah.
And you say that also the other people that came in to run television came back from the military. Very often they ran it like they ran military campaigns. You don't go back over the battle you lost. You just look at the ball towards the next battle. So there wasn't that many people who were interested per se in the culture of television or the art of television. That came much later.
Yeah, I think as Steve Roberts said earlier, there were a lot of people who worked in television who weren't remotely interested in television. Never mind saving it or collecting it. Paul, your experience of why stuff hasn't survived?
Well, I mean, it's hard to be kind, really, about the people that made the decisions about not to keep things, because when you look at what is missing, it doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense. Certain things have been kept, which, when you look at now, you think, well, I mean, I guess for me, the issue is this. We talk about the golden age of TV. People talk about the golden age of TV being the 60s. And I think for comedy and drama, it was. But nevertheless, there's still some comedy and drama that was kept, which actually isn't really very good. And a lot of the really good stuff has been lost. And so there didn't seem to me to be any measure of the quality of something.
It's comedy subjective. You can't say that.
Well, I mean, there is a film that has an episode that has turned up of A Very Merry Widow and How. One episode has turned up, and is now back at in the BBC archive. And having seen that, I can understand why it was wiped. But it's a shame that all the Till Death Us Do parts, which got millions of viewers a week, a lot of those are lost. And I don't think the two are comparable. I mean, I'm sure some people liked it, but I think there's a reason why it ran for one series.
I think there were a lot of different reasons that went on. I remember when I was first appointed to the job, I had to go around and be introduced to every head of production. And I remember meeting, I won't say who, and we ended up discussing Hancock and why not all Hancocks had survived on television. And in particular, there was a Hancock's 43 Minutes, which actually I think had been it was telerecorded, which survived almost by accident. And I was told that the BBC management saw it as part of their responsibility, particularly in entertainment and comedy, to guard the reputation of the talent. And if somebody did a really bad, in their view, bad show, or that they weren't happy with, or maybe their agent wasn't happy with, or what, I don't know the detail, that would be a reason for not keeping it, which again, as Dick just said, is very subjective, isn't it? And with the benefit of hindsight.
Absolutely.
It was financial as well, because a lot of the stuff that has survived, that you started the search for stuff that had been made as telerecordings and sold abroad, and maybe we could get them back, etc. If a show was sold abroad, then there was telerecordings of it there, and that was one of the reasons why the more successful shows have survived to a certain extent, just because there were recordings of them that were sent abroad, and they didn't wipe them, they didn't burn them, they didn't destroy them like they were supposed to, and 40 years later, we've found some of them still there in foreign archives.
That's right. I mean, a lot of the films that we've announced this week is, they're in a private collection, and unfortunately, and this is one of the reasons why we're here. The films came from a collection of a collector who has died, and so a lot of those films are in. They've still got ABC TV labels on from when they were screened in Australia. One of them, the Sykes and a Marriage, is in a can that has been reused. It previously had an episode of Spycatcher in it, and it's been and all the notes, duration, running times, which machine's going to run it on which channel of the ABC. All of that information is there, but it's Sykes and a Marriage in the can. And I think I was told earlier by Francis, I think it's Francis over there, Francis mentioned Spycatcher as a series which is not complete. So the Sykes and a Marriage has survived, the Spycatcher that was in the can hasn't. So, yeah.
But we've just had the same thing. There's been a discovery of one of those inexplicable discoveries, really. It's been found at Coventry Cathedral. Coventry Cathedral for a while had a BBC studio in it, and they must have done a lot of religious programs, maybe songs of praise there. And they were recently cleaning out that studio space and come across a BBC telerecording of a sitcom called Lance at Large, which was Lance Percival's sitcom from the 60s. Lance Percival had actually made a big splash in That Was the Week That Was. He did a topical calypso. He performed in a few sketches. People liked him. So it was the next step was to give him his own show. Now, That Was the Week That Was survives complete because it was kept by the BBC's legal department, because they're always worried about being sued. So they thought they had to keep it in case they went to court with it. But Lance at Large, because it wasn't controversial, wasn't kept. But this episode that's turned up at Coventry Cathedral and will be shown at Missing Billy White this year on December the 3rd at BFI Southbank, it's come back from ABC Australia.
Now.
Yeah, it's come back from ABC Australia the same way. Yeah. What it's doing at Coventry Cathedral, we don't know. But you're right about private collectors. When Bob Monkhouse's widow died, they asked the children, Monkhouse's children asked the BFI to come and look at his collection to see if we wanted it for the BFI. And we went down there and we presented with an extraordinarily huge collection of films and other stuff. But when we went through it, probably film-wise, the BFI had probably most of the films he had. He had a few bits of missing television, but not much. But he did have an amazing amount of really valuable missing radio. And that was the one thing that we wanted. But whilst we were doing this, we went up to his loft where a lot of this stuff was kept. And the loft was really hot. It was one of those, it was, and amongst the films, right in the middle was this can marked nitrate. Beware. So Steve Bryant, who was representing the BFI at the time, he went downstairs and said to the family, "You've got some nitrate in the loft. We're going to have to confiscate this. We're going to have to take it back to the archive." And very gingerly, very carefully, it was taken back to the archive. And then they turned around and got used to it. And it turned out to be just safety stock. And then we think that was Bob Monkhouse's last joke, that he must have put that out there, put nitrate, knowing that someone would go through that, thinking it was a thing. But he did have some missing television in it because Kaleidoscope decided they would take all the collection. We didn't want to split it up, so we allowed them to take it with the proviso that we could borrow and make copies of anything that we needed. But it was one of those things that it was a couple of years after, few years after he died, because his widow, I think she was too close to it. She couldn't bear herself to do anything with it. And in that time, even in those few years, a lot of the titles that we knew he had somehow gone missing.
Wow, like his joke book that went missing to the BBC.
It's interesting to talk about nitrate, because when we were planning Film is Fabulous, film collectors have been contacting us and sending us photographs of their collections, and quite a few photographs there are cans of film marked nitrate still. And if it's not stored properly, it is dangerous. So
I did give people the warning in the earlier session, which you two were probably busy elsewhere, that also that it smells of almonds. So if there is a sort of fruity smell coming out of the kitchen cupboard, it might not be the cake. It's
surely no tele recordings are nitrate, aren't they?
It's possible.
Really?
Yeah, it's possible.
I don't think there were any BBC ones. There was a lot of nitrate film,
Yeah,
an awful lot of that.
yeah. I mean,
Oh, news film, sorry.
yeah, and all the RKO shorts and whatever, which the BBC disposed of. Yeah. So, but I mean, I actually have a Canon nitrate in my shed. I can't do anything. I can't move it. I don't have a license to move it, so it has to stay there. But yeah, so going back to TV, I mean, I think the big change in the 70s was when the BBC wiped a lot of their videotapes, and that only left BBC Enterprises film recordings, and then BBC Enterprises threw away their negatives. And so apart from what was left, which ended up in the BBC archive, it's only the overseas sales prints, some of which found their way from the skip outside Villiers House in Ealing into the film collecting world. And I'm guessing that any film collector out there who's come across a black and white film recording of a BBC TV show probably may well have come from that skip, or people that worked at Villiers House saying, well, this is being thrown out, I'll give it to my mate who's got a projector. And I think that's how lots of things have managed to get out of the BBC.
And if I can just say, partly as an explanation to defend BBC Enterprises as they were then known. And again, earlier today, I appealed for a sort of collaboration more among the different archives that there are around the place to share more knowledge, work together and so on. But the BBC was a very fragmented organisation then. And the woman in charge of the film traffic in and out of Enterprises and making their telerecording negs quite often of the original videotape of the programme. And also she was in receipt of all the prints coming back that were supposed to be destroyed. She assumed that the tapes were safe in the archive, or at the time they would have been safe with the production department and VT operations, because the videotape didn't go into the BBC archive until nearly 1980, bit before 1980. Prior to that, it was perceived to be owned by the production department and managed for them by VT operations. There was no talk of archive, no perception of archive. The tapes were merely being kept for production's convenience, which was repeat by and large. And Enterprises at that stage were making film recording copies, because often many of their customers were still transmitting film rather than tape. So the technology has had a big effect on the retention of or the survival of television programming. And again, why should anybody here know that? Why would anybody know that? It's the sort of thing we've kind of dug up by wondering why are there so many gaps in these archives? And so almost there was no one to blame for that. She was quite right in assuming the tape was in the tape store somewhere.
And it was in terms of the timescale, it was all very compressed. So the BBC Enterprises stopped doing or making black and white film recordings for overseas sales in 1974 was really when they stopped, and some series had stopped being recorded in 73. And a lot of it was because Australia had decided it was going to start screening in colour, and were asking for colour. And Australia paid the most for their programmes, and so the cost of making the film copies was borne actually by that first sale to Australia and New Zealand. So so when they wanted videotapes, it wasn't really cost effective to make black and white prints, and lots of the other stations in Africa started to go colour around about 1974. So so film recordings stopped being made then, and I can completely understand this. If you've got you suddenly transfer from black and white to colour, you want colour content. And I seem to recall, and Sue, you might know more about this than me, but I seem to recall being told when I started at Pebble Mill, I asked about news archive from the 60s of Birmingham. And I was told that they got rid of when they moved to Pebble Mill, they got rid of all the black and white news archive because they'd gone to colour, which makes no sense at all because it's news.
Yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised. I don't know that, but I'm not surprised because in the library, as it was called before it became an archive, they used to make what were called stock shots out of the film offcuts from documentaries and programs like that. And they would make up stock shots of establishing shots of Birmingham or Leicester or Coventry or wherever, or South Africa, the jungle, whatever they got. And all of those were junked once colour became in, because the assumption was if they're making documentaries in colour now, they can't cut a black and white establishing shot of Leicester into a colour documentary about, I don't know, business in Leicester or whatever the documentary was about. So one can understand the logic, but not empathise with the short-sightedness of them.
Well, I think that's the thing. The decisions are made very quickly, and none of them really made sense, because now when we make documentaries, we don't care whether it's colour or black and white. If the footage is what speaks. And I think at the end of the day, I guess that's what we're really talking about here. You know, the film, the content, the material is what's the king here. And the archives and the film collectors out there who collect this material, they're the curators of it. You know, they're the custodians, the temporary custodians of the material. And I guess, and perhaps the thing that we should be talking about when we're talking about trying to recover lost TV and lost film, and we're here. I mean, how many film collectors are in the room? Put your hands up. So yeah, there's a good selection of film collectors, and you know, you're not going to be here forever, and hopefully the film will be. And I don't want to sound morbid about that. You know, film has a life, and television on film has a life beyond all of us. And if we want to preserve that, then we need to kind of reach out to everybody to try and, you know, help get that material in a position where it can be preserved. So, yeah. So
when we started Missing Believe White 30 years ago, one of the first, we put it out in a lot of papers, got a lot of as much publicity as we could, that we were starting this sort of treasure hunt looking for missing television programs. And we got contacted by a guy called Harold Barney, who had a collection, a lot of film, but within that film collection, he had a lot of television. He had some quite valuable stuff. He had a missing Last Night in 48 show, No That's Me Over Here, some plays, both from BBC and ITV. And I asked him about how he got this stuff, and he said that once he started collecting films, a lot of friends of his knew, and whenever they were passing the skip and they saw a film in there, they'd just grab it for him, regardless of what it was. He didn't collect anything in particular. He just collected film because he had projectors and he wanted stuff to show on it. And he was, you know, there was no reason why the content he kept was there, but it was incredibly valuable. And as someone that works in the idea of showing the material rather than just preserving it, and a lot of my colleagues work in the archive, but the job I have is to put it on screen, to spread the word, to get it out there, to alert people that it's been found, and also just to also release from the archive the old television that lays in there unloved and unwatched, you know, because there's a lot of stuff that is in there, and for years that stuff didn't see the light of day. But I'm happy to say that since digital came along, that we've managed to free up a lot of that stuff and get it out there as access. I mean, everyone knows what a fantastic job Network did in just getting some old and obscure television out there. And it's also alerted the BBC and other companies and Talking Pictures TV and things like that as just what could be done with this old material. So it's vitally important, I think, to and it's all of it. I mean, I think because the Doctor Who crowd have been so vocal, people think that if they haven't got Doctor Who, then what they've got is not worth anything. But culturally, it's all worth something. And that continuity of television, you know, whether it's weather reports or the epilogue or a news flash, adverts and stuff like that, all those things that make up the flotsam and jetsam of television are important when you're trying to tell the story of how television was. It's like having a jigsaw puzzle. You need all the pieces, not just the outside pieces.
Yeah, it's good. What do the BFI do? You know, when you because you've done a lot of recovering stuff. Dick and I started with him with Missing Billy White and me with the BBC's first treasure hunt. So we go back a long way on this. Just wonder, what does the BFI do with all the stuff you get back? Does it get preserved?
As Steve Roberts was saying in the earlier thing, we tend to borrow material that's missing. We tend to make a copy of it and return the originals to the donors if they want it. A lot of them don't. You know, there's another thing with Harold Barney's collection, and this is I don't want to be gender specific there, but it's been my experience is that very often the collectors are male, and it's very often their wives that are pushing them to get rid of the material because they want the house back. You know, so very often when films are returned to us, we'll give them a digital copy back. And in a lot of cases, they're happy for us to keep the film because it gets them out of a hole.
Yeah. I wonder how many hard drives there are that are swamped with this stuff that nobody knows how to plug it in or play it these days. You know?
I mean, interesting what you're talking about jigsaw puzzles. So we've been. I know Steve mentioned this earlier that we transferred 4 films. We've only announced 3. 4 films at the BBC. We've only announced 3, and I'm going to tell you what the 4th film is now.
Oh wow!
But it's sort of in 2 parts because of something else that happened today. So the 4th film is an episode of the Basil Brush Show, and everybody loves Basil Brush. It's from September 1970, and most of those from that period from September to December 1970 were not kept. And it's a very, very, very nice film recording, which came from a collector who has died, unfortunately. But today I was in upstairs because I had a few films to sell, and I had a pile of episodes of The Sooty Show. But before they were sold, this gentleman walked past and spotted them and said, "Oh, Sooty Show, I remember those." And he looked at what I was asking for them and said, I might be able to find something to swap you for them. And I said, "Well, what have you got?" And he said, "Oh, I don't know." I said, and he obviously thought Sooty and Kids So, and he said, "Well, I've got a Basil Brush." And so I've taken his number and his details, and I'll contact him and talk to him about that, because who knows what it might be. It might not be a missing one. It might be. But
I think that's going to be the quote from the whole day. You know, I've got a Basil Brush.
Yeah, exactly.
At this point, can I take the opportunity to introduce one of the many film collectors who are in the room, our surprise guest, who is Mark Stuckey from the repair shop. I knew I'd never get it right. I do apologize, Mark. Come up and join us.
Shall we move up one and then you can...
Yeah. Well, you can still...
And then I'll... Yeah.
Swap microphone.
Yeah, there you go.
Have the yellow one.
Have a yellow one.
The yellow one,
Okay,
yes.
you got the name right at the end.
Well, if I didn't get the show right.
I'm on
but,
1, 2, 3. Hello.
brilliant.
Nice to see everybody here, of course. Yes.
Well, thanks so much for coming. It's
Not at
great
all,
to
it's a
have
pleasure.
you here. And there are 2, well, there might be loads more areas of your work, I'm sure, that we should talk about. But certainly the one I know is about the restoration of the 35mm projector you've been working on.
That's right.
And that's
yeah.
going to feature or has featured
No,
in one
it's
of the
going to be
programs?
featured. Technically can't say too much about it because the
Okay.
BBC are a little bit, don't give the game away too much. But yes, there's a 35mm motion projector, which was in a pretty poor state. And it was for a real great concept, which again I can't really tell you, but I've been talking to Ricochet, who are the production company, for 3 years. Give me a 35mm projector. I don't want an 8mm one. I want something big and heavy, big, and eventually they managed to find this one with a terrific background story, and it's in fact reviving a cinema which is down on the south coast. So that has all been done. They reckon it's going to be one of their top ones of the show. They feel confident the way it's come across, not because I did it, just purely the concept and the people involved in it and what it will mean to the community. So that is good. And it's also refreshing even here to see there's so many 35 mils even in this modern cinema today. So yeah, it's the whole concept is fantastic, and the fact that there are so many people out there who love the concept of film, the fact you can hold it, it's like, this is, to me, film and projectors are like steam locomotives. Oh, we don't need them anymore, they're all old-fashioned, no one wants them anymore, and now people in their droves are coming to see them, where people have taken a lot of time and effort to restore, preserve. They're now getting quite good funding privately from people going to see them, but at the same time from institutions to actually support them. And again, our heritage, which this is all about, is now real core to us. We love what happened in the past. We want to maintain that and keep it. And this is just another part of all this community, and what goes around comes around. And I feel that we've only just started touching the surface. I feel confident this is going to get bigger again. I really do.
That's brilliant. Oh, that's brilliant. Can you name where the cinema is?
I can't say it's in Chelsea, no.
Oh, it's not there. Okay. That's well worth knowing. Thank you.
Well worth not knowing.
Yes.
Yeah, not knowing.
Yeah, as I say, I have to be a little bit careful. I'll get wrapped on the knuckles if I go too deep. But
No, we understand
yes,
that.
but it's obviously it's public domain in that locality, so it's not like it was hidden. And they've managed to get, I believe now, funding, and they've purchased this old building, which originally was a cinema back in the 1910s or something. So it's great the fact they've done it. There's a large amount of people in that area who wants it, and they're going to use it. So it's
Wow.
nowhere near dead as what we've been given the impression in the past.
That's great. And also the guys at the Cinema Museum in Kennington
Yes.
are doing a lot keeping it all alive.
Oh, they are
yeah.
exactly that. And it's funny, Rico, you look at different formats. I've got 35, 16 and 8, but I love 35 only because of the fact is 35, that's big, that's going to be fantastic professional. But I was actually amazed the first time today I've actually seen a Super 8 put on such a large screen, and I was walking down here thinking, come on, where am I going to start seeing all this fringing and sort of. And I was really amazed at how effective a small format can be so well projected.
Oh wow, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So any
Good
format
compliment
works.
to the guys here. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
They've worked
yeah.
incredibly hard to do that, to give everybody a real understanding of the different formats.
Yeah.
you know.
No, it's good.
We've found in the past that when material was found and given back, the publicity that generates causes other people to come forward and to present the stuff. And as someone that works in the industry, do you think if there was a sort of antiques roadshow or repair shop series that was just dedicated to film and projectors and the objet d'art of cinema and television, the collectors could be encouraged to bring their stuff there, a bit like the footage detectives, I guess, on TV, but on a bigger format.
It's funny you should say that, because I've been talking to Ricochet with a concept idea, exactly that.
Oh, great.
And they're waiting for this one to come out to see how the public take to it. And then if there's enough support there, that's when we're going to then be talking seriously of going around the country, looking at people, private individuals, from the smallest to the biggest, to encourage that.
Brilliant.
So I'm sure the BFI would get behind something like that. I mean, with a show like that, you'd need, I think, a bit of historical idea of what's come back in the last few years, say, just so you've got a starting point rather than starting from scratch.
Oh, exactly. And it's going to be, the thing is with cinema, you can go in any direction, from the history of the buildings to the concept of the original concept of film and why they changed formats, the projectors, the cameras, the people who used to go and visit it, because once upon a time, used to dress up to go to a cinema.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Today we're a little bit, since the tide's gone, I think a lot of what we used to do has gone as well. And I'm not wearing a tie, so I can't actually sort of knock anybody for that. But you can see standards have changed. And there was on actually YouTube, there's a 1950s representation of how a cinema used to be run. And many of you may have watched it. And it's absolutely brilliant how, the staff, how well they trained they were, and it was a complete experience. It wasn't, oh, let's go to the cinema, watch a film. You went there for the whole experience. And I think what sometimes with our own little cinemas are at home, we try to create that in our own little way, that whole concept of it. And I think that's what's great.
Do you wear a uniform then as you usher the neighbours in?
I've tried to get the wife to wear one, but she won't do it.
Well, a little penny and an ice cream tray. Yeah.
Yeah, we've worked on the idea. We've talked about it. And yes, but she said, no, I'm not going to do that for you. No. But we have great fun.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
Steve Roberts was saying in the earlier session that he was hoping to be able to talk through to the people in the BBC who was scheduling iPlayer and stuff like that to make them more aware of the value of these finds that are happening. They're nice stories to
They
tell
are.
around them. So good luck with this idea of a program. If you could give Ricochet's email address to everybody in the audience,
Yeah.
but they'll all send a letter saying
good
you
idea.
must do more programs.
But you can actually just go online, find Ricochet, and you're about to say that Mark says,
yeah.
and sort of do it. Because I honestly feel that there is something there, a story to be told, and also to encourage other people looking around here. We've got quite a sort of age variation, but we want to introduce the more younger blood into this. Not because. Because the trouble is, when we have gone, who's going to be behind us to follow it?
Well, yeah.
But I think when I was doing some of my work on the show, the camera crew had never seen film before. And they were absolutely staggered and amazed by the quality. They're going, oh, we use 4K cameras. Yeah, 35 mils, 5K. Oh, didn't know that. And all of this sort of thing. And the fact you can hold it, you can play with it. And it's not just presenting the film, it's all the aspects behind that. And I think a lot more people have the opportunity to experience that. Will then that invoke that enthusiasm for the next people who are coming behind us.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly what, John wanted as a theme for today is to make preparation for the next generation.
We need it.
Otherwise the danger of this stuff getting lost in the skip and all the rest of it.
Well, it's already proved, hasn't it, already that records have now come back into fashion.
Vinyl. Yeah.
Vinyl. Yeah, cassettes are coming back into fashion.
Oh, good.
So now, why not film?
Oh, exactly.
Film as a medium certainly has. A few years ago, there was hardly any laboratories making film in the UK, and now they're sprouting again. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Just on a personal note, you collect film as well, don't
I do, yes.
Have you got a particular area you want to collect, or are you more Catholic in your taste?
To be honest, I suppose like music, I collect what I like rather than the specific genre. So, so if I think the film's really great, oh, great, that film's available and it's not silly. I'm literally on purpose, I will not pay silly prices because I think it then encourages everybody else to think, oh, look, let's put them. No, we want it to a point where it's available for most of us to collect. We shouldn't have it that it's just a privileged few who can collect the real big blockbusters. I think that's totally unfair and unkind. And at the same time, you were talking earlier, and I think it's another thing. It's unfortunate you have to wait for someone to die to find out they've got something in there which a lot of people would love to have shared.
Well, that's so true. Yeah.
Why can't we get that? That if you've got something in your collection, knowing these days that just because you've got it, you're not going to be criminalized. You're not going to have it taken away from you, but you can then take it, give it to somebody who can responsibly copy it. You can then have the master back if that's what you wish to do. So then everybody can enjoy it. And that would be a fantastic thing to do. And great for you guys to encourage that.
Well,
Yeah, that's brilliant.
we do try and encourage that. I think the issue really is about awareness of certainly when we're talking about television, what actually constitutes a potentially missing program, and most of the film collectors that I speak to who have film in their collections have no idea that there might be any rarity to it at all,
Right.
or that it might be the only copy. They're not hoarding anything. They just add things to their collection because, it's like you said, you know, with what was the name of the gentleman who had that big collection?
Harold Barney.
Yeah, his friends gave him cans of films that they found
Right.
because he had a projector. And film collectors, you know, if someone offers them film, they're not going to say no. They'll use it for something and watch it and then move it on, and use it to trade with. And that's how this material is kind of moves around the film collecting world.
Yeah.
So and that's no different from anybody else that might collect you know, home video, I suppose.
Mhm.
And I think it's also worth bearing in mind why film collectors have, you know, where it all started from. It started because they wanted to put on a show for themselves and their families and friends. That's where it started. And what, you know, most film collectors that I speak to, what they really want to see is a perfect print with great color and fabulous sound. That's what they want.
Yeah.
And you know, an episode of Dad's Army or Sykes or whatever is that little short film they'll run before the main feature.
Yeah.
So that's how it's seen. It's not really seen to be anything, you know,
No.
collectible.
That's lovely. Thanks, Paul. I can see clouds gathering up there. The next session coming.
Right. Okay.
I just want to thank you all very much. I'm sure we could have gone on all afternoon. And I'm sure people would be nobbling you to talk about your experiences again. But
Yeah,
thank
we'll be
you.
around afterwards if you want to nab
That's
us.
kind.
Yeah, if
Thanks
you want to
ever
know
so
about
much.
the repair shop, please ask.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
a problem at all, or
That'd be
anything else.
great. And if I could just get one plug in for an event that's on at the Cinema Museum in London, unfortunately, on the 1st of November. It's a documentary made about work in the labs. A lot of it based on interviews with people who've retired. So back to what you were saying, Dick and Paul, film, but that would be really interesting. Now, I didn't know that film's coming back. So that documentary will have real value now, I think.
There's a lot of like the Phoenix here, you know,
Running film.
They want to run 35 mil. So
Yeah. Brilliant. Right. Well, thank you all very much, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.